Hey guys, Katie Cooper here with Keller Williams and the Home Sweet Home Group. And today we are at the Montgomery County Appraisal District with Sherry and Tony, and they're going to give us some information on the homestead exemption, tax value disputes, and other other exemptions that are available. So if you could just start out and tell us what the homestead exemption is.
Okay. The homestead exemption is a constitutionally approved by the voters exemption from property taxes. It reduces your taxable value, which your tax rate is based times your value to determine your tax levy. So basically, there is a state mandated for school districts homestead exemption of $25,000. So your taxable value is reduced by $25,000, and then the school district tax rate is applied to that. For most school districts in Montgomery County, on average, the $25,000 will save you $350
A year.
in a year.
Okay, for the average price, which is high 200s?
That's just $25,000
Okay.
times the normal, like 1.39% of the school district tax rate. It all depends on the school district tax rate on how much it's gonna save you.
Okay.
There is a caveat in the law where other taxing units can offer an optional homestead exemption, and that's based on a percentage, up to 20% of your homestead, of your taxable value. We saw that this past year with Montgomery County passing a 20% homestead exemption. So it takes your assessed value times 20%, and your taxable value is reduced by that dollar amount. So $100,000 house times 20%, it would reduce your taxable value by $20,000.
Okay, and that came into play in what
For
year?
2017 for the Montgomery County and for the hospital district.
Yes.
Oh, wow, okay, very good. So people will see an additional 20% in 2017. And is there how long will that be in effect? Is that indefinitely or just until it changes?
Until the taxing units can amend their percentage at any time. But once they put it in place, it's good for that year.
Okay, great. All right, awesome. And so as far as a homeowner closing on a home and then filing for the homestead exemption, can you explain to us how you would prefer for them to do that?
Oh, well, right now with our district, you would have to go on the comptroller's website or contact our office to get a copy of or look on our website to get a copy of the homestead exemption form.
Okay.
And you can file that at any time. If you buy the home in May, you can file it, but it does not go into effect until the first January 1st that's your primary homestead.
Okay.
That also you have to make sure that your driver's license, the address on your driver's license, matches the address of the property, the physical address of the property. That's one of the requirements under the tax code in order to qualify. And if you file for that and you have everything there, we'll put it in place as of January 1, that first January 1st, that it's your primary residence.
Okay.
So for instance, because one of the issues that we get are property owners will purchase the property January 30th. And they're thinking that they're gonna get their homestead exemption for that year, but they actually have to be on the property as of January 1st or own and occupy the property as of January 1st.
Yes.
So it will be January 1st of the following year.
Exactly. That is how it works.
Yes.
And we've had situations where we've talked buyers into closing in December so that they would be able to take advantage of the homestead exemption the following year.
Yes.
Now, when someone files for a homestead exemption, do they get a confirmation of that exemption or does it just go into place?
As of right now, we don't send out a confirmation.
Okay.
We will send an appraisal notice, typically in April or May of every year. And if their homestead is approved prior to that date that we shut down to run notices, it'll show up on that appraisal notice as a little HS under their value. They'll show exemption S. Yes.
Will it say exemptions on there or will it just say HS?
It'll say exemptions. There'll be a
And then
line that
HS.
says exemptions, and it'll HS and any other exemptions they have. It'll be also on there.
Okay, very good. And then sometimes we get clients who will call us and say that they got something in the mail, offering, for $40 fee to file their homestead exemption. There's absolutely no reason for a homeowner to pay to file a homestead exemption.
Absolutely not.
That is going on all across the state.
Yes.
It's a free service to file with the appraisal district. And now we will notify the property owners if something is filed and they don't qualify, or there's a problem with their application. Their driver's license doesn't match the physical address. We will notify them if it doesn't qualify.
If it doesn't, but you won't notify them if it did qualify and go through, which makes perfect sense.
That is correct. Now, going back on the one with the homestead exemption where you have to actually pay for it, because speaking from personal experience, when I purchased my home, I did receive that same piece of documentation, and what that company, I'm not sure who sends them out, but if you read carefully, they actually say that they're filing that homestead with the state
Yes.
versus the county.
Oh, versus the county.
Versus the
Okay.
county, so you're filing your homestead with the state, but we still never receive information about
Wow.
it being your homestead. And they're charging you for a service that's free, actually free.
And there are in the state of Texas, there are two different homesteads. There's a
Mhm.
homestead for property tax purposes,
Yeah.
and there's a homestead under the state law, which is the homestead that protects you from creditors and individuals like that. So there's two different homesteads. So we're doing the homestead for property tax.
For property
purposes.
taxes,
Yes.
yes, exactly. And going back to the question you just had, if someone thinks that they filed the homestead exemption, and for instance, if they went through one of these companies and it didn't get done, and 2 years later, they're like, oh man, my homestead exemption didn't get filed. Is that something that Montgomery County can backdate and be like, okay, we see that you didn't do this in 2017, this is 2019 now, we'll go ahead and backdate your homestead exemption, or no? It just goes into play for the year that they apply?
No, actually, but the new legislature in 2017, they actually allowed us to be able to go back 2 years.
2
So
years, okay.
for property owners that are filing for their homestead exemption for current tax year, which is 2018, but they've been on the property for the past 3 years, we can go back up until 2016
Okay, that
and
makes
allow
sense.
the exemption.
Okay.
And that was the state law. Prior to that, it was 1 year. We could go
Yes.
back 1 year, but
1
they did
year.
allow, they increased it this year to, we can go back 2 years.
Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. And as far as applying for the homestead exemption, you said that they have to mail it in. Is there a particular year that you're thinking that Montgomery County might be able to do this online?
We are actually, we just got back from our Texas Association of Appraisal District
Okay.
Conference. And we are contacting a vendor to get online forms, hopefully available after certification of the appraisal roll this year. So hopefully sometime after July, we'll have it available where they can file their homestead online.
Wow, that'll be much easier.
Yes, and at that point, they will get a notification, once it's approved,
Right.
they'll be able to
Email.
log in and it'll say approved, or they'll get an email at that point.
Okay, awesome. And just to clarify, when someone applies for a homestead exemption, it does work for the entire year. We've had questions on, well, they didn't start my exemption until March, so it only happened from March forward, but the truth is it happens for that entire year and for the life that you have that property.
Correct.
Right,
So you
okay.
don't- once you file and are approved, you don't have to refile for that individual property,
That's right.
unless the appraisal district gets some information that may question if you actually qualify, and then we can ask you to refile. But anytime we remove an exemption, unless it's an ownership change on the account, we are required to send a notice to the property owner to let them know, hey, we're removing your exemption, and give them a chance to tell us, no, you shouldn't, or a lot of people just ignore them.
Right, okay.
But that also goes back to that, if they did ignore the notice that we're removing the exemption, they can come back and say, well, I got this, but I just ignored it. We can go back and put it back on as long as they qualify.
Okay, awesome, very
Yes.
good. And it's probably also worth noting that you can only have a homestead exemption on one property.
One
Yes.
property.
Correct.
One property
Yes.
in the state, yes,
Okay.
and one property pretty much in the United States. That's a little
Okay.
harder for us to track, but
Yeah.
yes, within the state, you can only have one homestead.
Okay, very good. And then, so there's also a senior exemption, so if you're over 65, you can apply for an exemption, and what
Yes.
does that fix for you?
The over 65 it's different for each taxing unit. Each taxing unit can decide what amount they're gonna give
So,
as an exemption.
Hospital, MUD,
School
school,
districts, they can all,
Okay.
they get to pick the dollar amount they wanna do
Mhm.
for an over 65 or a disabled person's
Okay.
exemption. They get to pick a dollar amount there.
so it's kinda gonna determine where they live.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
It all depends on
Which
which taxing
neighborhood?
unit. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
very
and
good.
one extra thing with the over 65 exemption and the disability exemption is for the county, school districts, junior
Junior
college,
college.
and some cities, if
Uh-huh.
they've elected to apply a freeze, and it sets the year that you turn 65 and your homestead is in place, it freezes your taxes for those entities, it sets a ceiling. Basically, that year that you pay, as long as you don't add any new improvements to the, add on to the house or add
Okay.
a pool,
Yeah,
it sets a ceiling that your taxes to those entities will never go above that
the
line.
value at 65.
Not the value,
Oh.
the taxes.
The
The
amount you
taxes.
pay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a
So
misunderstanding.
the
We see
value can change, but the taxes
taxes
remain
will
the same.
remain, as long as there's
Correct.
no other changes to the property, adding
No
a
improvements,
new
yeah.
something that's new to the appraisal roll, then that gets added to your
Added on.
freeze. But then it's just
Okay.
refrozen at that new amount. Say you add a $20,000 pool, we take that times the tax rate, add it to your previous freeze and it sets a refreeze. That's a big misunderstanding we have, is a lot of people think it freezes the value.
Right.
It freezes, it sets a ceiling, a limit to where those taxes can be. It can go below that, and we had a lot of that this year with the county applying the 20% homestead
20%,
exemption.
okay.
Yes.
Some people's taxes that were frozen in previous years are actually less this year, so they pay the lesser amount, but the freeze ceiling still stays the same. So if their value goes way up again that later, or the county removes the homestead exemption, they still have that ceiling protection in place.
Okay, very good. All right, and how about disability exemptions? I actually don't know the answer to this question. Is it any person who is disabled can get certain exemptions, or is it just military?
Oh, okay. No, anybody basically, if you meet the qualifications under the Social Security Act, Administration Act, then you can bring that information to us and you can get a disabled person exemption applied to your property, as long as you're receiving benefits for that.
Okay.
Now the one for the military is different because that's the disabled veteran.
Okay.
So those are two different
So it's two
types
different
of
exemptions. Okay.
And with the disabled veterans exemption, there are different levels that you can have. And those levels are based on the percentage of disability that you're receiving from the Veterans Association.
Yes, and I've seen that, how they break that down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then, of course, then you have your DVX, which is basically 100% disability, which wipes everything out. It's zero taxes
No
at that time.
Okay, very good. So if you're a disabled vet, and you haven't applied for an exemption like that, it could save you a lot of money by doing that.
Yes.
And if you're a homeowner and you haven't applied for your homestead exemption, make sure you go to the link that we're gonna attach to this video, and make sure you print out the document to apply for your homestead exemption. Thank you for joining us today. Our next video is going to be about tax value disputes, if you want to join us for that one.